If everything that comes out of my mouth is what I believe in, I can never be a grifter. And if I believe what I say, I am not lying to your face. And to be a grifter, you have to lie to people's faces. So with that out of the way, let's see what he thinks a grifter is.
They mean, how can we know? How can we find out? Why do people you hate keep using them wrong? These mysteries.
Pauta correct. Extremely correct. Pauta extremely correct. Pretending to believe in something for personal gain. I could not have said it better myself. That is the foundation of a grifter.
And more will be explored today on this edition of
Words. What's the deal? How come, what's going on with them?
Okay, before I continue, is this an exploration of language or is this a redefining of language?
The first thing I want to talk about is how words work. And you might be thinking,
Nice short video.
Words work by having a definition, and that's what the word means, obviously. But like most things, it's a lot more complicated than that. Words are tools, and their utility comes from a shared meaning between different people that allows us to communicate ideas with one another. But that shared meaning is not determined entirely by their strict textbook definition. The meaning of a word can be broken down into two parts.
Let me just
denotation, which is the accepted literal definition of a word, and its connotation, which is the subtext or underlying meanings or associations that a word carries with it.
But here's the thing. Denotation and connotation, that may be the case, but they are still linked. You can't just have a word that has a connotation and a denotation that are completely at odds with one another. You can't. Just because there are some differences between a denotation and a connotation, their core meaning are still related. And that's not something that you can change unless you lie about it. That's really the only thing I can say. I'm sorry for being so harsh, but
these two things
that's
combine
really
in
all I
different
can
ways
say.
depending on things like intent and audience and environment to form our understanding of a word at the time that we're using it. In trying to sort of visualize the relationship between these two concepts, I sort of imagine them like a continuum with denotation on one side and connotation on the other side, and a second vertical axis that we can kind of think of as number of possible meanings or even something like maybe vagueness. At the far left, we have a purely denotative use of the word. That would be like a strict dictionary definition usage of the word with no room for any other interpretation. And then as we move right, the more the connotative component of the meaning comes into use, the more possible meanings and room for misunderstanding you will tend to have. Every time you use a word, you are essentially plotting out a place on this graph based on your intention, the context of your current conversation.
That is only a problem if you do not have principles. If you have core principles, you treat everyone around you by default with a baseline level of goodwill. You will not run into this type of problems. Well, you run into a lot less of this type of problems. This amount of this functions on the basis that the person you're conversing with, or you yourself even, are not conversing with goodwill. With goodwill, with honesty, with a level of mutual respect. And I don't mean respect. Okay, here's where we get into connotation and denotation just a little bit. And I don't mean respect as in the literal respect you have to someone. I know as in the literal respect, like respect is not given, that type of respect. But a mutual respect is as in you're conversing with someone, you expect a level of civility, a level of boundaries, a level of foundational honesty. That is the connotation of respect. But you noticed that, didn't you, lurkers? Didn't you notice it? The respect as a connotation and the respect as a denotation are still linked. And how are they linked? If you respect someone literally, you will be honest with them. You will talk to them with a baseline level of courtesy and civility. But in this case, respect as a connotation is that baseline level of civility and the baseline level of honesty. They're related.
And your current audience inform how you choose to use your words and where your intention plots on this graph. And then, if you are communicating successfully, the person you just said the word to maps it onto the same idea in their head from the same place on that graph, and they have understood your intended meaning. Now, right now, I imagine there might be at least one person who's watching this who's probably thinking, well, Jackson, you're just trying to explain in a really convoluted way why you aren't stupid for calling people grifters when they don't really meet the definition of grifter, aren't you?
Correct. Absolutely.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing.
Correct.
Shut up and let me finish, please. So to understand this relationship between denotation and connotation, let's go ahead and take a look at a couple sentences that show both of these things in action. Here are two sentences that have a very similar denotative meaning, but they have very, very different connotative meaning. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. Sorry, Daddy, I've been naughty.
They do have a core foundational link. They are both sinful. They are both misbehaviors. They are both misbehaviors. Just because you view the misbehavior in a positive light versus a negative light, it is still undeniable that it is a misbehavior. That's a matter
The
of
thing that makes
opinion,
understanding all this
seriously.
even more
The rest.
complex is the fact that both of these ends of our meaning graph can change over time. As a word is used more and more over time, it starts to pick up new connotations and possible meanings. Sometimes it'll even pick up connotations that are completely unrelated or contradictory to the accepted denotation. But also, the denotation can change over.
You can argue that there will be all kinds of connotations, but they always link back to the core meaning of the denotation. Some parts of the word from its denotated form will still stick around. Otherwise, otherwise you might as well create a completely different word with a completely different base meaning.
Over time as well. Denotation is the accepted definition, not the literal etymology of a word. There's a great video about this that I'll link in the description. It explores the concept of skunked words, which are essentially words that have their meaning completely changed by colloquial usage over time, sometimes even meaning the opposite of what they once did. Sometimes words are used to communicate their literal meaning. Sometimes they are used to refer to more imprecise ideas that exist in their...
Okay, but here's the problem. With words that change denotations over time, it has to be accepted. For denotations to properly change over time, there has to be a level of majority acceptance. So think of it like changing the constitution. Versus adding or changing a law, okay? I'm going to use law as an example. Law, funnily enough, law and language have quite a lot of similarities in a way. Given especially words still, because law relies on language so much that even the smallest words can change the meaning of something so significantly. But here, a constitution. What does a constitution What does a constitution usually do? What does it usually do? It creates baseline, foundations, and boundaries for government. For argument's sake, we're going to pretend that the executive branch and the judicial branch are in a vacuum. So, for the sake of simplicity, let's just focus on Parliament, the lawmaker, okay? Here's the thing. Ergo, Parliament, Congress, cannot make laws that breach the Constitution. Never. And this is why the Supreme Court in US exists. If a government makes a law that is outside the boundaries of the Constitution, it will not work. It will not work because it is invalid. So firstly, I think of connotation in the same way that a Congress or a Parliament makes laws. And I think of denotation as the Constitution that restricts the law. So think of it like the denotation is like a constitution that restricts the extent of the connotations. It can have all kinds of connotations, yes, but it has to adhere to the foundations of the denotation. This is my opinion, by the way. I'm probably talking nonsense, but this is how I view it, okay? A denotation is the constitution and the connotation is like a law. Like a law that a government makes. Denotation is the anchor that defines the boundaries. So, how do you change a constitution? You do it by referendum. Different countries do referendums differently, okay? But usually, from my research, by the way, this is not legal advice, but from my understanding, referendums are passed using two interrelated roles, two check marks. Both of them have to happen for a referendum to pass and a constitution to change. You need one. Firstly, majority of the citizens vote of yes. That's the first part. The second part is the majority in the majority of states to vote yes. The first one is the most straightforward. The second one is the confusing part, but basically the whole idea is most of the states in your country, through a state vote, says yes. Both have to happen at the same time for a constitution, any part of the constitution to change. Because certain states will have a disproportionate population number, it creates undue influence because there's a lot of people voting in a specific state and they believe most of them believe in a specific thing. So this is to make sure all the states have their fair share of a say in the changes of a constitution. So this is how I view denotation to change. It has to have an indisputable cultural consensus for the meaning to change on a foundational level. That is how I view the distinction between denotation and connotation.
Constellation of connotations. So, finally, with all that out of the way, we can start taking a look at some words and let me try to gaslight you into thinking that I'm not misusing them. Griff,
That was the first honest thing you have said to me in this video.
In the business, we call this foreshadowing.
You are gaslighting me into believing that words can change its meaning when it suits you. That is wrong. Who are you to dictate by yourself the changing of the meaning of a word?
The origin of the word grift comes from the word graft. In the mid-19th century, graft was used to mean hard work. A person doing a graft is a grafter. But by around 1865, graft in the US had flipped its meaning completely. A graft was the obtaining of profit or advantage by dishonest or shady means, especially bribery, blackmail, or the abuse of a position of power or influence. Then, by the early 1900s, the word grift arose as an offshoot of graft. The difference between grift and graft seems to come down to whether the person committing it is taking advantage of an official position. The grifter is a small-time confidence man, carnival swindler, a thief of some sort, while the grafter may be all of those things, but may also be somebody who engages in political corruption. Current definitions of grift tend to say something along the lines of to engage in petty or small-scale swindling, or a way of getting money dishonestly that involves tricking someone. And probably the most relevant modern meaning of the word grifter that most of us think of when we think of grifter content creators would be something along the lines of someone pretending to believe something they don't for the purposes of gaining money or influence from people who do believe those things. Or maybe somebody who intentionally spreads disinformation or riles up an audience for personal gain. Somebody who intentionally spreads disinformation or riles up an audience for personal gain.
Yes, Lukuchan, I saw the gaslight. Rouse up a crowd for personal gain. What the hell does that have to do by itself with grifting? The key fundamental requirement to satisfy the definition of grifting is the presence of dishonesty. So, you can rile up a crowd and you can intend to benefit from the crowd riling up. But if you believe in the things you say that rile up the crowd, you are still not a grifter, because you believe what you said. You can be opportunistic about it, but an opportunist is not a grifter. If you believe something, you rile up a crowd and gain their support by saying something you believe in but they also agree with, and you seek a benefit from it, you are just being an opportunist. An opportunist does not have to be dishonest. An opportunist only becomes a grifter if the person doing it does not believe what they say or what they express. That is the make or break for something to be designated as grifting. That was quite the sneaky addition. That was quite the sneaky addition. But because you made that fundamental error, a whole lot of your argument is going to fall apart already. Because that was the glue. If the glue doesn't work, it will all fall apart no matter how much you try to step something up.
Those definitions don't really show up in any dictionaries, but I imagine that's what most...
Those definitions don't show up in a dictionary because one of them you made it up.
The word grifter, and I think we would probably all agree that that's a pretty acceptable denotative meaning of this.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not. The first colloquial definition is fair enough. The second one is not. Just like how I was called a vague posting grifter earlier today, because I hold on, because I chose to fake post and not give names on certain individuals in a specific scandal. I decided not to give them their names because I believe I do not want to give them their names. Because I am an old-fashioned VTuber. I believe in the sanctity and the etiquette of keeping PLs from VTuber personas, regardless of how morally and ethically questionable the person is. If they were a public front-facing streamer, I would not care. But they are a VTuber, so I have to care. I believe exactly what I said when I made that post. I cared only about the moral of the story. Let others who are outside of the realm of VTubing do this. Let people outside who have different principles do what they do. But it's not for me. And you can't force me to do something I do not believe in.
This word currently.
Let's
So
continue.
what are some key connotations that would maybe go along with a more modern social media definition of the word grifter? I would say
Oh, by the way, just to add. Let's say for argument's sake, that there is no logical inconsistency. That let's just say for argument's sake that this redefining of the word is valid. No matter how valid it is, does it have the majority support for its redefining? Does it have complete cultural shift that will create consensus of the redefining of this denotation of this word? I don't think so. A lot of people, young and old, understand that grifter requires the key ingredient, and that key ingredient is dishonesty. The presence of a person's lack of belief in what they're expressing. That has not changed. No, not self-serving. Self-serving by itself is not complete. Self-serving liar. Not just self-serving full stop. That is a factor that adds into grifting, but by itself it is not. By itself it is not. If you are self-serving and you are honest, you are an opportunist.
greed, maybe politically charged.
No. If a person is greedy and he admits he's greedy, he's still not a grifter. If a person is greedy but sells you a good service, he's not a grifter. He's just greedy. That is a completely different word already. That is a completely different word with a completely different meaning. If you sell a faulty or misrepresented product to enrich yourself greedily, then you are a grifter. He is lying through his teeth. By your own definition, you are a grifter, at the very least. You satisfy the lowest of the lowest foundations. By your own logic, you are a grifter. Politically charged is another thing. You cannot say that. Because to be a grifter and politically charged, you have to be a politically charged liar. So, for instance, I'm thinking of a very specific association that claims to be a charity, but turns out that they were just embezzling their supporters' money. This person, I know you all probably know who I'm talking about. You all probably will know who I'm talking about. They had a very big presence in the US during 2020, the run-up to the 2020 elections. And they said a lot of politically charged things, such as America is inherently racist. We have to support people of our own kind. Donate to us and we will support all of you. And it turns out that donations all go towards this person's mansion. Yes, correct, Kitsune, correct. That politically charged liar who uses racial tensions, and racial hostility to enrich themselves, lying to their own supporters to enrich themselves, that is grifting. Politically charged by itself is not grifting if you believe what you say. So, for instance, Amelia. The best example is Amelia. Amelia from the Pathways UK game. She is politically charged. But she is not a grifter. And you know why? Because she genuinely believes in the politically charged statements she makes. You can call her an extremist. You can call her radicalized. But you can't call her a grifter.
Inflammatory, even audience captured. Inflammatory once again. You can be inflammatory and honest. And if you're inflammatory but honest, in other words, let's say the Gordon Ramsay effect, for instance, for argument's sake, I personally do not know how honest Gordon Ramsay is, but let's just assume that he's genuine when he talks smack at other people's restaurants. But let's just say he's inflammatory, but he's honest. That does not make him a grifter. That just makes him mean. Being mean does not make you a grifter if you are honest. Now, audience captured, that I agree to an extent. Actually, I kind of agree. Audience captured is if your audience forces you to behave in ways that you do not believe in, it is a form of grifting to an extent, yeah. Those are the things that come to mind for me, at least, when I think of a grifter.
No wonder you call everyone you don't like a grifter. No wonder. Jackson, what do words mean, as you say?
And these are typically the accusations that are being invoked by people when they call their political opponents grifters. So, what am I actually saying when I call these people grifters? Well, I do believe they're dishonest, to varying degrees, sure, but I believe they're all lying.
I do believe they're dishonest. In other words, you only think they are. But the problem is, can you prove that they are? It's all fine and well to say you believe they're dishonest. It's all fine and well to say that. But can you prove that they are? Give me an example of, let's make it very easy, the lowest hanging fruit, Rev. Give me an example of Rev saying something and then in a different time saying something completely opposite. Has Rev created a John Del Arroz, John the Rice moment? I know enough of Livlet, Kirsha, and Rev to know that whatever that comes out of their mouth, they do believe it. And I have not received any evidence that suggests they do not believe what they say. I have not interacted or watched enough of Powder to draw an inference on her, but if this Jackson guy thinks that Rev, Leaflet, and Kershaw are dishonest, I question whether Powder is dishonest. I do not know, because I have not interacted with her or watched much of her before.
Fairly often. I believe that they're intentionally choosing inflammatory topics and comment.
Again, choosing inflammatory topics is not grifting if it's true, or they believe it to be true. Grifting is a very specific, requires a very specific element of dishonesty. And even if something may not be true, but if the person expressing it believes it to be true, they are not grifting. They are just misinformed. LA is over. I would have called LA worse things personally. A cultural imperialist hellhole. And I will 100% believe everything that I just said. And then let's see. Kershaw, Fox News. Minnesota Daycare Fraud Edition. There is a lot of evidence piling up. There's a lot of evidence piling up. And even if there wasn't a lot of evidence piling up that creates that understanding, if Kershaw believes what she says, she is not grifting, because there is no dishonesty in there.
Commenting on them in ways that they know will rile up their audiences and drive engagement.
But do they not believe in what they say though? That's the important question. That's the question you will keep avoiding. Jackson, that is the question that you keep avoiding. Yes, it's inflammatory. Yes, it riles up their audience. But query whether do they mean what they say. That is
I think
something
they're
you keep
willing to,
refusing
at
to
the
answer.
very least, push the boundaries of their actual beliefs, if not flat out misrepresent them when they do this. Most
Proof?
Nice argument, Senator. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the up.
You are making a claim, an allegation against them. You're making an allegation against them.
Most of them seem to
Separate,
have
shut
gone
up.
down a similar route of courting a reactionary audience through anti-woke commentary and then leaning into more and more inflammatory topics until they're essentially just openly criticizing anything remotely liberal or leftist and shilling for the MAGA movement either explicitly or implicitly by only covering topics that are negative towards MAGA's enemies.
On a balancing scale, which side of the political aisle almost entirely monopolizes political violence? Genuine political violence, as in being beaten on the head with a bike log from merely saying stop fighting. Not even taking a side on the enemy side, but just saying stop confronting each other. Which side does that? Which side used firearms and ejected it at the neck of someone, all because this someone says things you do not like? Which side did that? Which side almost ended the life of a political candidate? Which side burned down every city, extorted Cuban restaurants, burned down a Vietnamese church for no reason at all? For no reason at all. which side gets to say the most unhinged, insane, lunatic things on the internet, threatening people's lives over disagreements over politics, and hardly ever get repercussions in their jobs, in their sponsorships, in their partnerships. Your arguments only hold water if, indeed, factually, both sides have the same magnitude of toxicity, hostility, and aggression. And both sides have received the equal amount of repercussions for their toxicity, aggression, and actions. Then I can agree with you. But is that the case? Is that the case or not? Can you answer me that question?
Do we actually believe that these people have an informed opinion about the governor of a state they don't even live in?
The governor himself declared those things. He tweeted daily about those things. It's not our opinion. It's not Kershaw's opinion. It's not Leaflet's opinion. Tim made those tweets. And Kershaw and Leaflet made observations from those tweets. What else do you want us to say? Tim didn't do it? I saw the tweets myself as well. I saw them. I'm not even American and I saw them. What do you want me to say? What next? Are you gonna call me an American now? I saw.
Or are they just
them.
following the hot topics that their audience will react most strongly to?
If they follow the hot topics that their audience react most strongly to, the question is, do they believe it? If they do believe it, then they're not grifting.
To be fair, it is
It's literally that
entirely
straightforward.
possible that these people are not grifting at all. It is entirely possible that they are 100% sincere in all of their beliefs, and they are only making this type of content because they think it's good and they are achieving something positive with it.
That is the default. Innocent until proven guilty. Presumption of innocence. I
That
agree.
is
Presumption
possible.
of innocence.
I admit that. Personally, I find that possibility even more sad than if they were just doing it for money.
So you are not. So what you're saying is there is a real chance they're not grifters, and this was all just petty. This was all just petty insults. Is that what you're trying to say?
Fascist.
Open your-
Okay. So this one is a bit more of a complex
this is taking
definition.
so long.
I said this in another video, but Ian Kershaw, a historian who is regarded as one of the foremost experts on Nazi Germany, famously said, trying to define fascism is like trying to nail jelly to a wall. Different fascist regimes have different characteristics, and it seems to be actually fairly hard to have a one-size-fits-all definition of fascism. Another difficulty is that, much like communism, fascist governments do not act exactly within the stated tenets of their political movement. It's important to look at their actions alongside other factors. Simply going off their stated ideology will not give you an accurate picture.
Yes, spoken bits, yes. He's essentially saying anyone can be a fascist. Even if you do not believe in anything fascistic, you are still a fascist.
Robert Paxton, a historian and author of The Anatomy of Fascism, gives this definition: a form of political behavior marked by obsessive preoccupation with community decline, humiliation, or victimhood, and by compensatory cults of unity, energy, and purity, in which a mass-based party of committed nationalist militants, working in uneasy but effective collaboration with traditional elites, abandons democratic liberties and pursues with redemptive violence, and without ethical or legal restraints, goals of internal cleansing and external expansion. Obsessive preoccupation with community decline, humiliation, or victimhood. The idea that America is no longer great and needs to be made great again. The idea that immigrants are flooding our country and ruining it, causing decline. The idea that we are humiliated on the world stage, which Trump has repeated over and over again. Cults of unity, energy, and purity. Party of nationalist militants working in uneasy but effective collaboration with traditional elites. Abandons democratic liberties and pursues with redemptive violence and without ethical or
Okay, you lost me here. You lost me here. You lost me here. Why do you lose me? Well. I don't know about this Greenland thing. I really do not know what this Greenland thing is about, so I'm just going to...
expansion.
I'm not going to engage with it. Okay, here's the thing. Here is the thing. Okay, here is the problem. Maduro had a bounty under Obama. He also had a bounty under Biden. He has had a bounty under multiple administrations. And there have been talks frequently enough about quote-unquote taking Maduro to justice for the way he treats his citizens and among other things. And Trump was the only one who did something about it. The whole country goes mad. This is hypocrisy. And I do not entertain soapboxing from a person who expresses a hypocritical opinion. So no, I will not accept this example.
So what am I saying when I call the current Republican administration fascist? I'm saying they're fucking fascists.
No, they're not. Like I just described with you all over the past half an hour that I was rambling, that's not fascism. That is not. That is quite literally not. You can say it is a mismanaged, probably. You can say it's a what else can you say? Because it is mismanaged, you can say it is, so bad priorities. But this does not satisfy the practical meaning of fascism.
Jackson himself said that he hesitated to call Trump a fascist, but that hesitation is gone after January 6th, when Trump attempted to coup the government.
I remember his Twitter post. Let's have a look. He probably has deleted it. But I remember I saw this post just before Trump got his Twitter account at that point in time permanently suspended. I remember that very vividly. I saw it written, and I'm sure a lot of you probably saw it too. He said, and I roughly quote, our demonstration has to be peaceful and stand down. Do not get any closer to the Capitol building. That was his words. Demonstrate and protest, but do not be violent. So I don't know what this is on about, what this is about. I don't know what this is about. You can call the people who did enter the Capitol buildings idiots and fools, but to blame Trump directly when he said, do not do it, that is stupid. By that logic, I remember vividly, one of the Antifa shooters who, if I recall correctly, also ended the lives of a few people, he was a Bernie Sanders supporter. Should I hold it against Bernie Sanders? Should I? Jackson, I know you're not watching this. I know you're not watching this, Jackson. I know you're not watching this. But please, use your eyes and read. I know you're not reading. I know you're not watching this. And I know if you are watching this, you're going to try and call me a grifter too. But please, I beg of you, use that eyes of yours and fucking read. If you're going to call people things, at the very least, call them out on the things that they actually did. Okay? You probably already noticed this, right? I hate it when people lie to my face. A big discovery right there. But you probably already know this. And Jackson, I started watching your video. When I watched it, I started watching your video with good faith to understand the points you're making, because I'm also curious your mindset. But the moment you resorted to blatantly fucking lying, the moment you resorted to lying to my face, oh no. You deserve that. You deserve that dislike. So don't you dare. You have no right. To me, you have no right to soapbox to my face when you are lying. When you are lying, you are bloody fucking lying. He said it himself. He said it. Be peaceful. Stand down. No violence. And what did you say? He's egging it on.
2020 removes my objection to the fascist label. His open encouragement of civic violence to overturn an election crosses a red line.
Robert Paxton is lying. And I'm kind of curious who this Robert Paxton is. Let me have a look. Let me have a look at this Robert Paxton. I'm gonna have to look at this. I am petty, yes. I am petty. I'm petty when it comes to liars. And you
Trump's
rely on
incitement
NBC
of the
News.
invasion of the Capitol on January 6th, the lately fascist parliament already discredited by its
Okay,
inefficacy
I get
against
it.
the Great Depression,
I get it.
attempted entry government of this administration. You might have figured out by
Oh,
now
boy.
that the reason I felt like making this video is that recently I've been accused quite a bit of not understanding the meaning of words that I'm using. I've been told
Spoiler alert, you still have not. You still have not. I'm sorry, but you still have not. I wasted the time that I could have spent playing video games, tiring myself over listening to a liar like you. I want a refund. I want a refund.